Hi, my name is Matt. I'm going to talk to you about two instruments that I've come across recently, instruments that are developed for younger students who want to learn how to play either the saxophone or the clarinet, but they're not quite big enough to actually be able to handle those instruments. These are instruments from a company called Nuvo Instruments. This is called the jSax, and this is called the DooD, D-O-O-D. And the reason why I came across these instruments is not only am I a professional musician, but I also make part of my living through teaching clarinet and saxophone. And I had a young student who wanted to learn how to play the clarinet or the saxophone, and so her mother approached me about that. And I immediately thought that she was too young to learn that instrument, but she was very enthusiastic. So I said, okay, well, I'll bring a clarinet or saxophone over, we'll test her out, we'll see whether or not it's possible. And as it turned out, she was very intellectually capable of understanding the saxophone, understanding concepts about how to use the proper embouchure for the mouthpiece, manipulating the reed, breathing, all of that stuff. She was very good at immediately. She got it, it clicked. But the one thing that she couldn't do is she couldn't get her hands around the instrument. She just couldn't reach around the saxophone. She also, her fingers weren't big enough to plug the holes on the clarinet. So I suggested to the mother that we start her on the recorder, and then we'll put her on the recorder, and throughout the process, while she's learning some very important musical concepts on the recorder, I will bring a saxophone by, I will bring a clarinet by, and we'll see whether she's grown or whether, just her coordination has gotten to be such that she could actually handle one of those instruments. Her mother wasn't going to hear that. She actually got kind of irate with me, and in so many words said there's no way that her daughter is going to start off on some lame instrument like the recorder. She's very disappointed that I won't teach her daughter how to play the clarinet or the saxophone. Initially I was going to argue because me and so many other people that I know, not only woodwind players, but so many people that I know, started off as the recorder being kind of like a gateway instrument as a young kid into eventually learning a woodwind instrument. But then I thought, it's 2016, maybe somebody's invented something, let me consult the internet to see whether there are some actual alternatives to the recorder. It turns out there are quite a few. Most of them, I would say, fall under the category of being like toys. But when I came across these instruments by Nuvo Instruments, this changed my mind about a lot of that. And whereas the recorder it's great, but it is limited. It's just an instrument where you actually have to plug all the holes to be able to play. There's not much to manipulate here. You're just basically just blowing through, so you can use really bad technique and still get a sound out of it. The thing with the Nuvo Instruments is it employs, if you look really closely, you can see right here, this is a reed, just like a saxophone and just like a clarinet. This is a plastic or synthetic reed, but in essence it's still the same. Also has a mouthpiece here, just like a saxophone or a clarinet. And it employs the use of keys for the most part. If you can see right here, these open and close the holes with your fingers. The other unique aspect of it is it employs keys and open hold keys. And so this is actually could get a student closer to playing the saxophone or getting used to playing the clarinet, which you do have open hold keys on the clarinet. Also open hold flute. The other cool thing about it is you can plug these holes like that with, you see this little apparatus here that I put on there. That plugs the hole. There comes a stopper for all of these that you can use. And this makes it more of a diatonic instrument, pretty much pitched in the key of C, with the exception of one note here and there. But when you open up the holes, it then becomes a chromatic instrument. There's a lot of things you'll see in the demonstration. At the end of this video, I'm going to play some tunes that actually demonstrate some chromaticism and some grace notes that utilize the open hold chromatic configuration here. The other thing that's unique to this that makes it more like a saxophone is you have these extra keys off the side using the little finger here. If you know anything about saxophones or clarinets, we have a table of keys over here, or an extra configuration of keys that we utilize to play with our little finger. So this instrument actually will get a student accustomed to doing that, whereas it's not, you don't have that on the recorder. Also have another one down here that you use your little finger for, that you would also do on the saxophone or the clarinet, but not necessarily on the recorder. And there's a lot of things that you can get around on this instrument that you can't. Just having a reed, having something here that actually vibrates once you blow over it. You can manipulate it for vibrato, for things like glissandos and pitch bends. So these are kind of some advanced concepts that little kids really wouldn't be able to learn on any other instrument other than a reed instrument. But up until very recently, with the advent of something like this, it's actually really hard for a small kid around the age of 7 or below to actually be able to handle a larger instrument like the saxophone. The next one is the DooD, D-O-O-D, and this is very similar to, in terms of the fingering configuration here, it's very similar to the recorder, but you actually use actual keys and holes to actually make the notes here. So you could get a young student, more accustomed to being able to eventually transition to an instrument that uses keys as opposed to just holes. And just like the jSax, it's got a reed and a mouthpiece like a clarinet or a saxophone. So yeah, I think these instruments are really, really great. They're machine washable, they're very durable, and just in terms of being an alternative to the clarinet that can get somebody closer to playing a reed instrument sooner rather than later, so that transition by the time that they're about like 8, 9, or 10, when kids are finally starting to be big enough to play those instruments, I think it's going to be a lot easier for them to understand, because it's hard enough in the beginning when you're dealing with those instruments to deal with the amount of weight. Also, the instruments, the legit instruments are much more delicate, so it's hard enough already to do that. But if you have a head start with an instrument like this, then I think learning the saxophone and the clarinet when it's time, it's going to become a lot faster due to these instruments. So check out the rest of the video and enjoy. First up is the jSax. You can see here, this is sort of a simplified version of a saxophone. It's got a mouthpiece and a reed, keys, and then it also has some open hold keys that are very similar to the clarinet or the open hold flute. I'm going to play 2 tunes on this one. First, you'll hear a jazz standard entitled Caravan, followed by another standard entitled My Little Suede Shoes. And then on this instrument, this is called the DooD. It's spelled D-O-O-D, and you can see this is actually sort of a simplified clarinet. You have a mouthpiece like a clarinet, also with a reed, and then some very simple fingerings that are actually sort of simplified versions of a recorder, but with the usage of keys. So you get a student who's going to be able to start learning how to manipulate keys as opposed to just plugging holes. On this one, I'm going to play a tune called Fly Me to the Moon.